The bright studio lights of The View bathed the set in a soft glow, but the tension on stage was anything but gentle. Senator John Kennedy walked in with his usual slow, deliberate stride, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning the room like a man who knew a fight was coming. Across from him sat Joy Behar, smirking, her red-framed glasses catching the light. She leaned forward in her chair as if already sharpening her claws. The audience applauded politely, but there was an undercurrent of curiosity. They'd heard the rumors about this matchup. Kennedy, known for his blunt, no-nonsense style, had been invited to discuss political civility and respectful discourse. But everyone knew the producers booked him because he wasn't going to sugarcoat a thing. Joy started first, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Senator, you've made quite a name for yourself insulting people you disagree with. Don't you think that's part of what's wrong with our country?" She crossed her arms, tilting her head like a schoolteacher scolding a child. Kennedy chuckled softly. "Miss Behar," he began, "the problem with our country isn't that we call out foolish ideas, it's that too many people think foolish ideas deserve respect just because they're loud about them." The crowd let out a low "oh," sensing the gloves were already off. Joy's eyes narrowed. "So, you're calling me foolish?" Kennedy leaned in, lowering his voice just enough for the microphones to pick up every syllable. "No, ma'am. I'm saying you've built a career being a talking hemorrhoid, loud, irritating, and impossible to ignore." Gasps erupted from the audience. Some laughed, some groaned, others clapped in disbelief. Joy's jaw dropped for a split second before she quickly masked it with a laugh, the kind that hides anger. The producers in the control booth leaned forward, whispering urgently into headsets. This wasn't going to be just another daytime talk show moment. This was the kind of exchange that would explode across social media before the hour was over. Kennedy sat back, calm as ever, but his eyes told the story. He'd come here for a reason, and this was only the opening shot. The studio was buzzing like a kicked hornet's nest. Audience members exchanged glances, some covering their mouths, others fumbling for their phones to start recording. Joy Behar, veteran of 1,000 TV clashes, was clearly rattled, but she wasn't about to let Kennedy walk all over her. She adjusted her glasses, forced a smile, and fired back. "Well, Senator, if you think that's civil discourse, maybe we've just found the problem with the Senate. You mistake cruelty for honesty." Kennedy tilted his head, his expression unreadable. "There's a difference between cruelty and clarity, Miss Behar. If your policies, and your commentary, give folks a rash, I think it's my duty to tell them who's causing the itch." The crowd broke into laughter, the tension twisting into entertainment. Joy's co-hosts, sensing the exchange was spiraling, tried to jump in. "Let's keep this on track," one of them urged. But Kennedy wasn't done. He leaned toward Joy, his voice steady. "The trouble with this whole setup is you've gotten used to talking over people, ridiculing them until they back down. I'm not one of those people. I'm here because folks back home are tired of celebrities pretending to be the moral compass of America while cashing TV checks for spreading venom." Joy's smile faltered. "So you're saying I'm not qualified to talk about politics?" "Ma'am," Kennedy replied, "you're perfectly qualified to talk about television. You're not qualified to lecture hard-working Americans about values when you treat disagreement like it's a disease to be cured." Gasps again. The audience clapped, harder this time. Even some crew members behind the cameras were grinning. Kennedy's words weren't just sharp, they were cutting through the studio's carefully curated civility like a hot knife through butter. Joy tried to pivot, but the atmosphere had shifted. Kennedy was in control now, and he knew it. Joy Behar inhaled sharply, trying to regain the upper hand. "You know, Senator, insults might get you laughs from your base, but they don't solve real problems." Kennedy leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowed like a trial lawyer waiting for the perfect cross-examination moment. "You want to talk about real problems? Let's start with the fact that you and your show spend more time calling half the country stupid than discussing the price of groceries, the cost of gas, or why working families can't afford a roof over their heads. That's not journalism. That's performance art for people who already agree with you." Joy's jaw tightened. And I suppose your solution is to come on national television and call me, what was it, a talking hemorrhoid? Kennedy smirked. Yes, ma'am. Because like most hemorrhoids, your rhetoric is irritating, unnecessary, and shows up exactly when folks least want to deal with it. The audience roared. Some were doubled over in laughter, others stared wide-eyed, unable to believe what they'd just heard on daytime TV. Even the control room lit up with frantic chatter, producers debating whether to cut to commercial or let this play out. One of Joy's co-hosts attempted damage control. "Senator, with respect." Kennedy cut him off, pointing at Joy. "The American people are sick of being talked down to by folks who think fame equals wisdom. My constituents don't watch this show to be scolded, they watch it to see whether anyone will stand up to the smugness." Joy, visibly shaken now, looked to the audience for support, but the reaction was mixed. Some clapped, others booed, and the rest just kept recording. The hashtag talking hemorrhoid was already exploding on Twitter. Kennedy had landed his viral moment, and he knew it. Joy Behar's cheeks flushed crimson, part embarrassment, part rage. She straightened in her chair, clearly determined to claw back the moment. "Senator, people like you come on this show thinking you can bully your way through an argument. But let me remind you, you're a guest here." Kennedy tilted his head, his voice low but cutting. "Ma'am, I was invited here. And when I show up, I don't bring talking points written by a producer, I bring the truth. If that feels like bullying, maybe it's because the truth doesn't play nice with nonsense." The audience gasped. Someone in the front row audibly whispered, "Oh, wow." Cameras zoomed in tighter on their faces. Joy's co-hosts were now visibly uncomfortable, fidgeting in their seats. Behar tried a new tactic, sarcasm. "Oh, the truth, huh? Well, enlighten us, Senator. What exactly is the truth according to John Kennedy?" Kennedy leaned toward her, eyes locked. "The truth is the average American's life has gotten harder while TV millionaires like you lecture them about morality. You're out of touch, Ms. Behar. Folks don't need celebrities pretending to be prophets, they need someone to fight for them. And right now, that's not you." The crowd erupted in a mixture of cheers and groans. Behar, flustered, reached for her coffee mug but misjudged the distance, knocking it over. Hot coffee spilled across the table, narrowly missing the pile of cue cards in front of her. Gasps filled the studio. Kennedy didn't miss a beat. Careful now. Wouldn't want to burn the script. Laughter thundered across the set, the control room deciding to keep rolling. Twitter was now a storm of memes, screenshots of Behar's shocked face alongside captions like, "Kennedy didn't come to play," and "Hemorrhoid status, confirmed." The studio had shifted from a controlled TV environment to something closer to a prizefight. Joy Behar, visibly rattled, waved her hands as if to reclaim the upper hand. "Senator, you can throw all the insults you want, but this platform isn't about you. It's about holding politicians accountable." Kennedy, leaning back in his chair with a half-smile, fired back instantly. "And yet, here you are dodging questions and throwing shade like it's a high school lunch table. If this is your version of accountability, I can see why your ratings need CPR." The audience roared, half in shock, half in delight. One of the camera operators accidentally let out a laugh loud enough to be picked up by the boom mic. Joy's co-hosts tried to jump in, but Kennedy raised a hand. "Hold on, let the lady finish. I'm curious how she spins this one." Joy tried to pivot to a safe topic. "Well, since you seem to know everything, tell us, Senator, why you think America's problems are so simple to fix." Kennedy's drawl sharpened. "They're not simple, Ms. Behar. But step one is stopping folks with big microphones and small ideas from telling hardworking people what to think. That's how you stop making noise and start making progress." There it was. The line that made the control room scramble to cut to commercial. But they didn't make it in time. Joy, stung, blurted out, "Well, I guess you'd rather have people like you run the country into the ground." Kennedy chuckled, slow and deliberate. "Darlin', you're confusing me with someone who listens to you for advice." The crowd exploded again, the noise forcing the host in the control room to ride the volume down. Memes were already flooding the internet. One showed Kennedy with the caption, "Verbal body bag delivered." Another had Joy mid-yell with, "This meeting could have been an email." By the time the segment reached its 15th minute, Joy Behar's composure had completely unraveled. Her voice had risen an octave, her gestures were frantic, and the crimson flush across her cheeks was unmistakable under the studio lights. "Senator," she snapped, "you think you can just come here, insult me, and get applause for it? This isn't your personal circus." Kennedy, unfazed, adjusted his tie and gave a slow nod. "You're right, Joy. This ain't my circus. But it's starting to feel like you're the ringmaster." The audience erupted again, some gasping, others outright laughing. Even the makeup artist backstage could be seen covering her mouth to hide a smile. Joy tried to fire back, but her words stumbled over each other. That's not, you're deflecting from the real issues." Kennedy leaned in, his tone now a calm drawl laced with steel. "The real issue, Ms. Behar, is that you've turned political discussion into a stand-up routine without the punchlines. People tune in for facts, not to watch you audition for the role of America's loudest echo." The room went silent for a beat. One of her co-hosts coughed awkwardly, clearly wishing they were anywhere else. Joy's eyes narrowed. "So you think you're better than me?" Kennedy smiled. "No, ma'am. I think I'm just not here to play make-believe with the truth." The control room debated cutting to commercial again, but the producers knew they had viral gold in the making. Camera 3 zoomed in for a tight shot on Joy's face, jaw tense, lips pressed thin, before swinging back to Kennedy, who sat like a man who had just checkmated his opponent in 4 moves. On Twitter, hashtags began trending, hashtag Behar meltdown, hashtag Kennedy clapback, and hashtag talking hemorrhoid gate. Clips were being shared in real time, each more brutal than the last. Joy Behar leaned forward, eyes blazing. "You're just here to grandstand for your base, Senator. You don't actually care about having an honest conversation." Kennedy tilted his head, a slow smile curling across his face. "An honest conversation? Joy, bless your heart, but talking to you feels like playing chess with a pigeon. You knock over the pieces, strut around like you won, and leave a mess on the board." The audience gasped so loudly it almost drowned out Joy's sharp inhale. One of her co-hosts mouthed, "Oh my God," while another pretended to shuffle papers just to break the tension. Joy stammered, That's offensive and uncalled for." Kennedy leaned back in his chair, adjusting the microphone clipped to his lapel. "Offensive? Ma'am, what's truly offensive is how you sit here every day, tossing out half-baked opinions and calling it journalism. You're like a talking hemorrhoid, loud, irritating, and impossible to ignore." The audience exploded. Some stood up cheering, others clapped with shocked laughter, and a few simply stared, wide-eyed, as if they'd just witnessed a once-in-a-lifetime takedown. Joy opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. Her lips moved in silence, her hands gesturing aimlessly as the producers in the control room debated whether to cut the feed. Kennedy continued, his tone now almost gentle, but his words still carrying a knife's edge. "You wanted an honest conversation, Joy. Well, there it is. Unfiltered. Straight to the point. And if you can't handle it, maybe it's time to rethink the way you run this show." Camera 1 caught Joy's clenched jaw, the vein in her temple throbbing, while Camera 2 framed Kennedy in the perfect hero shot, calm, composed, and victorious. The clip was online within minutes. Millions watched. And Joy Behar had just learned the hard way that inviting John Kennedy onto your show meant risking total public humiliation. By the time the show wrapped, Joy Behar's earpiece was buzzing with frantic producers. "We need to control this narrative," one voice insisted. But control was already gone. Within minutes, the clip of Kennedy's talking hemorrhoid line hit Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. It was everywhere, in slow-motion edits, remixes with dramatic music, even GIF loops captioned "Senator Kennedy wins again." Hashtags exploded, hashtag Kennedy vs. Behar, hashtag talking hemorrhoid, hashtag Kennedy mic drop. Late-night hosts replayed the moment before their monologues, some laughing, others pretending to be scandalized while clearly enjoying the drama. Meanwhile, Kennedy's office released a short, polished statement. Senator Kennedy believes in plain talk. He respects differing opinions but will never shy away from calling things as he sees them. That single paragraph poured gasoline on an already raging fire. By the next morning, Joy Behar tried to regain footing on The View. Sitting at the table, she forced a tight smile. "Yesterday, our discussion with Senator Kennedy got colorful," she began. "I don't think personal insults help our political discourse." Kennedy, appearing via satellite from Capitol Hill, smirked into the camera. "I agree, Joy. Which is why I came here to talk facts. But sometimes, when the truth hurts, folks hear it as an insult." The studio audience burst into applause, catching Joy off guard yet again. She shuffled her notes, clearly rattled, as Kennedy leaned back in his chair, radiating control. Cable news kept replaying the back-to-back moments, Joy's attempted damage control and Kennedy's calm counterpunch. It wasn't just a news story anymore, it had become a cultural moment. And whether you loved him or hated him, everyone had to admit one thing: Senator John Kennedy knew how to win a fight, even when the battlefield was live TV. The next 48 hours felt like a political earthquake. Kennedy's approval ratings, already solid among his base, shot up by double digits in multiple online polls. Even people who didn't usually follow politics were sharing the clip, saying things like, "I'm not a Kennedy fan, but that was savage." On TikTok, a trending soundbite featured Kennedy's line overlaid with the sound of a cash register, as if every replay was putting political capital in his bank. Memes poured in, Kennedy photoshopped as a boxer standing over Behar, Kennedy holding a mic surrounded by flames, even Kennedy's face superimposed on famous roast scenes from movies. Behar, on the other hand, faced a rough week. Headlines were brutal. Behar bruised in live TV clash. Kennedy's one-liner rocks The View. When you invite Kennedy, expect fireworks. Inside ABC, whispers spread that producers were hesitant to invite Kennedy back, but executives knew the ratings spike was undeniable. That episode had doubled their average viewership. Controversy, as always, was good for business. Kennedy's team seized the momentum. He made quick appearances on conservative talk shows, each time retelling the story with his signature mix of humor and unapologetic bluntness. "I didn't mean to cause a fuss," he'd say with a grin, but if the shoe fits, the hosts laughed, the audience cheered, and the narrative kept tilting in his favor. Meanwhile, Behar's attempts to reframe the exchange as offensive fell flat. The more she complained, the more clips resurfaced, and the more people seemed to rally behind Kennedy. By the weekend, political commentators were calling it the roast heard round the nation. Kennedy hadn't just won a TV moment, he had owned an entire news cycle. Monday morning, Kennedy stood at the steps of the Capitol, a small crowd of reporters buzzing with anticipation. The air was crisp, and the Washington skyline seemed sharper than usual, as if the city itself knew the senator had just pulled off one of the most talked-about moments of the year. "Senator Kennedy," one reporter called, "do you regret your comment about Joy Behar?" Kennedy adjusted his tortoiseshell glasses, his face calm but carrying that faint smirk that had become his trademark over the past week. "Ma'am," he said, "I've been in politics long enough to know you can't please everybody. But I also know that if you're gonna dish it out on national television, you'd better be ready to take it. My comment wasn't about cruelty, it was about calling things the way I see them." Cameras clicked furiously. Another reporter shouted, "Do you think this moment has hurt bipartisan discourse?" Kennedy chuckled. "Discourse only works when folks talk straight. If we all dance around the truth just to keep from ruffling feathers, we stop solving problems." And I'd rather be accused of being too honest than be known for saying nothing at all. The crowd of press scribbled frantically, sensing another headline in the making. One bold journalist asked, "So what's your message to Joy Behar now?" Kennedy didn't hesitate. "My message is simple: this country is facing real problems, and I'm here to talk about those, not to play nice in a TV sandbox." He paused, then added with a flash of humor, "But if she ever wants a rematch, I'll bring the coffee and the candor." Laughter rippled through the reporters. As Kennedy turned to head inside, the clip of his parting words would soon be spliced onto the original viral moment, creating a perfect loop of defiance, humor, and unapologetic conviction. In just a matter of days, Kennedy had turned a live TV ambush into a masterclass on political judo, using his opponent's momentum to land a blow that still had the nation talking. For his supporters, it wasn't just a win, it was proof that Kennedy could stand in the lion's den and walk out grinning. Folks, sometimes politics isn't about playing it safe, it's about speaking plain truth, even when it rattles the room. What happened with Joy Behar wasn't just a TV spat, it was a reminder that free speech means being willing to hear things you don't like. I'll never apologize for being honest, for standing my ground, or for calling out hypocrisy when I see it. If that makes some people uncomfortable, well, that's their problem, not mine. This isn't about me winning an argument, it's about making sure the truth gets its turn in the spotlight.